The phone buzzed in her apron, almost lost under the clatter of plates and the hum of voices. She thought about ignoring it, like she always did during her shifts, but something inside told her to look. When her eyes landed on the glowing screen, her heart skipped. The message was blunt, merciless. Final notice: pay up or be out by the end of the week. Her fingers tightened around the device until her knuckles turned pale. She wanted to throw it, smash it, scream at it, but instead, she shoved it back into her pocket and stepped back into the dining room with a smile plastered on her face. The kind of smile that hurt. The restaurant was packed that night, every table filled with polished shoes and designer dresses, the scent of expensive wine mingling with seared steak. She moved between them like a shadow, balancing trays and pouring drinks, nodding politely when someone barked for more bread. None of them knew that her entire world was teetering on the edge of collapse. They laughed, they clinked glasses, they debated vacations, while she calculated numbers in her head with every step. The overdue bills, the medical prescription her mother still needed, the house no, the only home her family had slipping through her fingers. At one table, a couple waved impatiently for their check. She hurried over, apologizing softly, though she had done nothing wrong. As she bent down to collect the payment, the man made a joke about people like her never keeping up with life. His words stung more than she let show. She pocketed the signed slip, walked back to the register, and reminded herself not to cry. Not here. Not now. Crying wouldn't fix the fact that her landlord had already given her too many warnings. She tried to steady her breathing in the break room, leaning against the wall, but even there the numbers wouldn't leave her. How much she owed. How little she had. How many hours she had worked without pause, yet how little difference it made. She thought of her younger brother's face, hopeful every time she brought home groceries. She thought of her mother's voice, weak but still reassuring, telling her they'd get through this like they always did. She wanted to believe her. But tonight, the weight pressed too heavy, and the cracks were beginning to show. Back out in the dining room, she nearly tripped as she bumped into a chair. A sharp laugh followed from a wealthy diner. She bowed her head and apologized again, cheeks burning, her mind drifting to the message still sitting on her phone. Final notice. Eviction. The word kept ringing louder than the chatter around her. As she straightened the chair, she caught her reflection in the polished window, the uniform, the tired eyes, the forced grin. She hardly recognized herself anymore. Yet she kept moving. Because what else could she do? Each step across the dining floor felt like walking a tightrope, balancing between survival and collapse. She didn't know that among the noise and the laughter, someone was watching her, someone who had heard the faintest crack in her voice when she said good evening, someone who would soon change everything. Her arms ached, though she hid it well, balancing trays with the ease of muscle memory. Every plate she set down, every glass she poured, felt heavier than it should. The weight wasn't food or drink, but the thought of bills stacked at home, red-stamped notices crowding her kitchen table. She smiled at the laughing guests, but in her mind she saw the eviction letter, her mother's medicine bottles, her brother's backpack left on the curb. She moved between polished tables where voices rose with laughter and wine, their words floating free, untouched by worry. They toasted promotions, new cars, weekend trips abroad. She nodded, pretending to be invisible, her apron tied too tight against her ribs. The smell of steak and garlic butter made her stomach churn, not from hunger, but from the thought of debt collectors knocking when she was not there. Her family forced to open the door. The clock ticked slow, its hands dragging across the night as if mocking her. Every shift break vanished into running water, wiping counters, folding napkins, but her mind never left the image of her home slipping away. She imagined her brother's drawing stuffed into a trash bag, her mother's framed photographs left behind in an empty room. The more she thought, the heavier the tray grew, until her fingers went numb under the strain. At one corner table, a man in a crisp suit laughed so loud the chandelier trembled. He flicked bills into the air for the piano player as though money were confetti. She tightened her grip on the tray and turned away, forcing herself not to wonder how many late payments those scattered notes could have cleared. At another, a woman pushed away her dessert untouched, a slice of cake that could have fed her brother for days. She carried it to the kitchen, eyes low, pressing her lips shut so no one would hear the bitterness building inside. The night stretched longer, the hours refusing to pass. Her feet burned, blisters rising under the leather of her worn shoes, but still she walked on. A guest snapped his fingers for more wine. Another gestured without looking at her face. She answered each one with the same nod, the same gentle tone. They saw only a waitress, never the storm brewing beneath. She stole moments by the kitchen door, leaning against the cool tile, her breath trembling. She could almost hear the landlord's voice in her head, cold and certain. She wiped her eyes quickly before stepping back out, because the floor demanded perfection, because her debt had no patience for weakness. And so she carried on, tray after tray, as the night blurred into itself. Laughter surrounded her, but it rang hollow in her ears. Her smile never slipped, but every step was stitched with fear, every glance at the clock a reminder of time running out. What none of them knew was that this long night, heavy and endless, was the very night when everything would begin to change. The hallway was dim, lit only by the sliver of fluorescent light spilling from the kitchen door. Her back pressed against the wall. The weight of the night finally caught up with her. The trays, the endless orders, the fake smile stitched to her face, it all tore loose at once. Her chest heaved and hot tears slid down her cheeks, silent but unstoppable. She bit her lip, trying to swallow the sound, but one whisper escaped, ragged and raw. "I can't lose the house." She thought she was alone. For weeks, she had trained herself to fall apart only in hidden corners, always collecting herself before stepping back onto the floor. But this time someone lingered. At the far end of the hall, the man in the tailored suit, the one who had sat in the corner booth with a view of everything, had followed quietly, puzzled by her strength and her silence. The millionaire who had been entertained by others' laughter all evening now stood frozen in the doorway, hearing what no one else was meant to hear. Her words cut sharper than anything he had expected. It was not drama, not exaggeration. It was survival. He had watched her before, the way she never faltered even when a guest snapped their fingers at her, how she laughed lightly when others might have snapped. She was a fixture of the restaurant, efficient, untouchable. But now the facade cracked and he glimpsed the truth that lived beneath it, a woman pressed against a wall, holding her world together with tired hands. She pressed her palms to her eyes, ashamed at the weakness spilling through her. Images swirled in her head. Her mother's face pale without medication. Her brother's wide eyes asking questions she couldn't answer. The landlord's letters stacked like a countdown to exile. She thought of how the house smelled of cinnamon on Sundays, of how the walls still carried her childhood laughter, of how everything they were could vanish into the cold space of an eviction. She drew in a shaky breath, pulling her apron tighter as if it could shield her. She whispered again, softer this time, the plea not meant for anyone but herself. "Please, not the house." Her words trembled, dissolving into the hum of the restaurant beyond the walls. And in that fragile moment, the millionaire's world shifted. He had come expecting service, not truth. He had sat through endless conversations of profit margins and acquisitions, never once thinking of the cost carried by someone standing just feet away. Now, hearing her words, the numbers he lived by meant nothing. There was no balance sheet for what he had just witnessed. Dignity strained to its breaking point, pride dissolving in the shadows, and a quiet prayer spoken by someone the world refused to see. She wiped her face quickly and straightened, ready to step back into the dining room to stitch the mask over her features once more. But the weight of the moment lingered, pressing down on both of them. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. For the first time, he saw her. Her first instinct is to step back, to pull herself together and slip past him with a polite excuse. She isn't used to being seen in her weakness, least of all by someone like him. But his presence blocks the hallway, not with force but with quiet insistence. His voice is softer than she expected, stripped of arrogance. Why does someone so capable carry pain like this? The question lingers, not harsh, not mocking, just curious in a way that unsettles her. She shakes her head, murmuring that it doesn't matter, but he doesn't let it go. His eyes stay on her, waiting, and something inside her cracks open. Maybe it's the exhaustion, maybe it's the hopelessness, but the words spill out before she can stop them. She tells him about the overdue rent, the eviction notices piling up, the endless shifts that barely cover bills, the younger siblings who depend on her, the mother's health that keeps her awake at night. Each confession feels like pulling threads from a tapestry she had kept tightly woven, and soon she's standing bare in front of him, every struggle laid out in the silence of the corridor. She expects judgment, she expects to see pity or worse, the smug superiority of someone who never had to count pennies or pray for time. Instead, his expression softens, and his voice lowers even more. "What if I help you?" The words strike her harder than any insult could. They don't sound rehearsed. They don't sound like charity. They sound like possibility, and that frightens her more than despair ever did. Her heart pounds as she stares at him. Help has always come with strings. She has seen people offer kindness that turns to control, favors that become debts. She doesn't trust easily, especially not a man like him, a man whose shoes cost more than her rent. "Why would you?" she asks quietly, her throat dry. He doesn't answer right away. He only tilts his head, as if weighing his own thoughts. Finally he says, "Because sometimes the right thing is obvious when you finally stop looking at yourself." She doesn't know what to say. The corridor feels too small, the noise from the dining room far away, like another world entirely. For a moment, she lets herself imagine it breathing without fear of losing her home, sleeping without worry, watching her family safe inside four walls. The thought alone almost makes her knees buckle, but she can't let herself believe too quickly. Still, something in his voice lingers with her, refusing to leave. It isn't just his wealth that makes the offer heavy, it's the fact that he asked instead of ordered, that he chose to step closer rather than walk away. And as she stands there, apron crumpled in her hands, tears drying on her face, she realizes the night has shifted. For the first time, the storm inside her has been heard, and for the first time, someone has offered not pity, but a hand. The morning begins like any other, but the air feels different. When she walks into work, the staff are already whispering, their eyes darting toward her, their voices lowered but buzzing with electricity. She doesn't understand until her manager pulls her aside, fumbling with words before blurting out the news. The debt, the rent, the looming eviction, the crushing weight that has followed her like a shadow, is gone, cleared, settled in full. Her first thought is disbelief. Mistake, she thinks. Some clerical error, some fluke. But then the truth trickles in, confirmed in hushed tones. The millionaire who had overheard her tears made good on his word. Not only had he listened, not only had he asked, but he had acted. The restaurant feels like a stage. Customers who know nothing of her private life sense something has shifted. Their gazes linger longer, curious. The other waitstaff moved differently around her, some with awe, some with envy, all carrying the same realization that her life has been altered in a way none of them could have imagined. Yet for her, the shock is not in the numbers. It is not in the balance statement or the landlord's sudden politeness. It is in the simple, staggering truth of being seen. For so long she has blended into the background, her smile a mask, her service flawless but invisible. She has swallowed words, hidden pain, lived in silence. And now, someone who could have remained blind had chosen not to. She moves through the dining room with a steadiness she hasn't felt in months. The clatter of plates, the murmur of conversations, the sharp laugh of a customer they no longer press against her chest like weights. Her back straightens. Her steps feel lighter. The fear that lived in her every breath has loosened its grip. Of course, there are murmurs. Some wonder if she earned it, if there is more to the story than kindness. Others speculate about motives, about debts that shift from money to loyalty. She hears the rumors, but they slide past her. None of it matters against the truth beating inside her. She was heard, she was valued, and she survived. That night, when her shift ends, she doesn't linger in the shadows of the hallway, weeping quietly to herself. She steps outside into the cool air, the sky stretched wide and endless above her. For the first time in a long time, the horizon doesn't look like a threat. It looks like a promise. The turning of fate did not erase her struggles, but it changed her story. No longer the waitress waiting to be crushed by debt, she walks forward with her head high, her voice steadier, her heart less burdened. What began as a broken whisper in the dark has become the night her life was rewritten. And for the first time, the world feels like it has space for her. Not as someone to be overlooked, but as someone who matters. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest actions change everything. Let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing your city, your country, your corner of the world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful, unexpected tales. Until next time, stay bold,